So, my name is Jenny Dale, and I decided to do my final project on the role of the whale in whaling and Inupiat culture. My outline for my presentation is to talk about the whale in oral tradition, the whale in contemporary stories, the evolution of whaling, the whale in culture, and of whaling in women. So, the whale in oral tradition, I'm going to be focusing on 3 stories. First is from the Tikigak, who are the oldest known Inupiat group who live on the peninsula named the same name. So, in their oral tradition, the land was once a whale-like creature who was killed by a primal shamanic harpooner. The whale lived on part body, part spirit, and became the peninsula. That's from Lowenstein. The whale, then, is in this case the creator of land and of the home of the Tikigak. As a tribute to the original land, when Tikigak hunters took whales in the spring, the whale's bodies were dismembered and stored underground in abandoned igloos, thus joining the mythic whale's body. This concept of the land and the whale being one is more fully explored in the myth of the land whale, which includes the story of the raven man Inupiat. Inupiat, however, cannot find nor harpoon the whale until after he tricks the Uluwaktak, a woman who does not want a husband, to submit to him. Thus, there is also a link between the woman and the whale as well, with them being one and the same. The connection between women and whale is further explored in The Raven and the Whale, where a raven flies into a whale for land as it's flying over the ocean and finds an igloo with a girl tending a lamp inside the whale. She warns Raven not to touch her lamp as she keeps disappearing and returning. Raven puts out the lamp and the woman falls dead. The reason why she kept going in and out was because she was the whale's soul and breath. The lamp was the heart of the whale. At the end of the story, Raven emerges from the whale and eats the whale's skin. A skin boat with people comes by, and Raven transforms himself into a man and becomes a hero amongst the people for killing the whale. There is a metaphorical relationship between the woman, whale, and igloo, which was inside the whale. Within this book, Ancient Land Sacred Whale, Lowenstein elaborates the use of other stories and how the igloos were made up with whale bones, and that the igloo is also a symbol of women representing reproductive parts. Thus, the scene of the raven emerging from whale can be seen as a rebirth of sorts, or the conquering of the female self. The scene repeats in a way with harpooning, as the harpoon can be seen as a phallic symbol, piercing the feminine symbol of the whale. So, the whale in contemporary Inupiat stories. As whaling remains a vital part of Inupiat cultural identity, there are many modern stories. Like their ancestors, modern Inupiat whalers believe that whales must be treated with respect and that the whale gives itself to the hunter who is deserving of the gift. Some captains say that the whale itself chooses the worthy captain that the whale gives itself. Others explain the whale as a gift from God. This last interesting, as God, with the capitalized G, implies a Judeo-Christian God. The contrast with the previous line, that the whale gives itself, which places the whale in a more active role, whereas the God sentence places the whale as an object in a more passive role. That both explanations for a successful whale hunt coexist both shows the impact of missionaries on Inupiat spirituality and the strengths of the Inupiat own beliefs and their flexibility to adapt. A more specific story about whales comes from Harry Brower Sr., who is a native of Barrow, Alaska, and of mixed Inupiat heritage. When Brower was in a hospital in Anchorage, a whale showed him events happening in his hometown of Barrow, Alaska. In his perspective, it was a supernatural experience from which he learned a great deal. In the dream, a baby whale spoke to Brower of his experiences seeing its mother shot, and that Brower's son, Harry Jr., had given the baby whale a place to stay because nobody loves a calf. Later, Brower found out that his sons had been whale hunting in late springtime, which they are not supposed to do, as that is when the whales have just calved. They killed a mother whale and its baby. The baby's body was in their cellar. I thought this is interesting in showing the continued spiritual significance of the whale for Inupiat peoples. Let's go on to the evolution of whaling. Starting off with rituals and traditions. Music has played a stronger role in rituals and traditions of the pre-contact era. Shamans especially sang or hummed songs in order to lure whales, among many other things. In earlier times, shamans sang special songs to attract whales, to control wounded whales, to ensure a boat's safe passage back to the shore fast ice, and to create favorable winds that would open the leads. That is from Brewster's book with Conversations with Harry Brower Sr., and that's called The Whales They Give Themselves. These songs, anyway, are called charm songs, and along with these songs, stories were also told by shamans or older men, and these stories and this tradition of storytelling has continued in modern times, where people tell their own stories about whale hunts, or they tell whaling myths, especially that of the Raven Man, Tulunugirak, which I mentioned earlier. Other traditions and rituals surrounding the whale hunt focus on pleasing and not offending the whale in numerous ways. With time and Western contact, these rituals have changed to adapt. The flexibility of belief and tradition is not a weakness among the Inupiat, but a strength. By adapting their culture in small ways to accommodate a new environment, they can keep the inherent meaning and spirit of their beliefs and traditions alive. Anyways, old traditions of the whale hunt focus more on the behavior of the wives of the hunters. The wives, as seen as having a spiritual connection with whales, were supposed to remain at home and do nothing for the duration of the hunt. By being passive, the wives were active in the whale hunt, with the belief that the whale will reflect their behavior and be still and docile. The traditions surrounding the modern whale hunt are still behavioral, but focus less on the female whale aspect that older tradition held dear. Correct behavior nowadays includes cleaning, preparing, and organizing the whaling gear before the hunt, cleaning out the underground ice cellar, and lining it with a layer of fresh snow. Being a kind, generous person who treats others with respect, being quiet when camped on the ice so as not to scare the whales, keeping a clean whaling camp and wearing clean white cloth parka covers so as not to offend the whales, paddling to the skin boat without splashing and making noise, and sharing the wealth of a successful harvest. So not only do these keep the whale from being offended and pleasing the whale, modern traditions also ensure a clean and congenial community. The white clothing would also serve as camouflage, masking the presence of the whalers. This is also seen in the detail Sheila Frankson provides in her first experience of whale hunting. When we went out on the ice, we weren't used to use anything red because the color would scare the whales. Red is a very noticeable color within a white landscape. Also, I wonder if the connection to red to blood and birth be a cultural or spiritual reason for avoiding the color when hunting, or if the color shows an anticipation of a kill or overconfidence on the part of the whaler, qualities that would offend whales. Onwards to equipment in the evolution of whaling. So approximately 2,500 years ago, the ancestors of the Inupiat started hunting sea mammals, and about 1,500 years ago is when whaling technologies first appeared. Umiaks, also called skin boats, were more prominently used before industrialization. Nowadays, more people use motorboats, dog sleds, snowmobiles, hunting guns, and other technology that eases the physical aspects of whaling. Whaling technologies would also include items such as ice picks, axes, and shovels, which are used to make trails to an open lead. An open lead is where the ice is broken and formed an open channel. The open channel is where whales travel along, as it allows them to rise and to breathe in oxygen. Windbreakers, pieces of ice set up at the edge of the lead, were also used in conjunction with the leads to look into the open water for passing whales. These methods of creating a trail and windbreakers are still used today. The whaling culture. I found it interesting that within the Inupiat culture, there is a difference between whaling for bowhead whales versus other whales as follows. Even though whaling is closely associated with Inupiat culture, the majority of Inupiat villages are not directly involved with hunting bowheads. However, hunting for beluga whales, walrus, and bearded and ringed seals remains important to most of the villages. This was interesting as it separated hunting for belugas to hunting from bowheads, which seems then to be more, and bowheads seem to be more aligned with the mythical whale from the story of the Raven Man. So, in villages where hunting, in Inupiat villages that do participate in whaling, the process of whaling is a year-long activity. This is exemplified in the account of Harry Brower Sr., who I mentioned earlier. It is also important to note that Brower has also collaborated with Western scientists to track bowhead whale populations in order to show the population had enough numbers to allow native whaling. Going back to the year-long importance of whaling, in Brower's words, the importance is that whaling is a culmination of the year's hunting activities. People talk about whaling, they have pictures of people whaling on their walls, and they survey the ice all winter wondering how it will affect the whale hunt in the spring. Young people are encouraged to whale by doing chores at whale camp, by listening to and watching older crew members, by helping the butcher, and by cooking and serving at the feasts. So villages or towns that do whale involves the whole community regardless of age. Whaling provides a direct connection to heritage and application learning as well. In June, after the whaling season is over, there is a feast held called Katak. During the Katak, food is shared, including the whale meat, of course, and there is much gathering and socialization. The whaling and women. The role of women in the whaling traditions has changed as a result of contact and industrialization. A few of the ritualistic procedures were omitted or toned down after contact with missionaries. In some people's opinion, the woman's previous role was considered even more important than the men's. Her part in the whaling ritual was so important that some local people claimed it was a woman who largely ran the operation. This is not the case in modern whaling. Women more often now play a monetary role by purchasing gasoline and needed equipment. There are some rituals that remain into the modern day. One example is the custom of bringing water to the dead whale, an example from the olden days. At this point, the woman Inupiat entered a new ritual phase. Her whale has been taken. Dressed in new clothes, she led the wives of her crewmen to the sea ice, where she offered the dead whale water from a special pond in Tikigak. She thanked the whale for coming and welcomed it to her family. This custom has evolved and its meaning slightly altered. Nowadays, the Inupiat's wife and the families of crew members also adhere to prescribed behavior, such as greeting the whale with a cup of water, so he would feel well treated and encourage other whales to come back the following year. The connection between whale and women in some ways has been lost in modern-day traditions. Perhaps this is because of the change in the role of women during the hunt. There are no longer a representation of the whale, and the whale's behavior no longer remains dependent on her behavior. It's also interesting to note that there is more openness to women joining along on whale hunts. When she was 16 years old, Sheila Frankson had such an opportunity. Like the young boys who went along to learn the ways of the whale hunt, she had specific tasks. This included washing dishes after every meal and keeping the area inside the tent clean. Sometimes she would also help cut up driftwood and seal blubber to burn the stove and get snow to melt for drinking and washing if they were running out. Though Sheila only did chores and didn't actually participate in the hunt itself, it shows that the whale hunt has evolved past having women stay at the village waiting or doing other things. I think that's very interesting. So in conclusion, whales and whaling are a vital part of both the cultural identity and spirituality of the Inuit peoples, regardless of if their village are active participants in whaling. The whale represents not just the land, but the Inupiat's connection and belonging to their lands. The whale in myths is part of a trinity with the raven man and his wife, representing the interlaying forces of the world. Festivals and the whaling hunt reinforce identity and Inupiat values, such as oral tradition in the form of music, stories, and myths, the passing down of knowledge, community involvement, and sharing. This makes the Inupiat whaling tradition quite distinct from commercial whaling, and identifies that native whaling is not about substance or some substance of the body, but of the soul and culture. The bowhead whale is in a way the default whale when discussing Inupiat myths and stories. The beluga and narwhal are important, but do not have the same hold upon these histories. Though I would like to explore more the role of the beluga and narwhal and why the bowhead seems to be more important. But that is for another presentation. And an example of the noble importance of the bowhead is that there is an exhibit at the Inupiat Heritage Center in Barrow, Alaska. The exhibit is specifically on the bowhead whale and its role in Inuit cultures for the past 5,000 years. Here is my resources slide 1, resource slide 2, and my resource for the pictures. I hope you've all enjoyed this presentation. If you have any comments, please give them to me. Thank you.